Let's do it. I see people are filtering in, but we will get started
Absolutely.
promptly on time. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, How to Give Online Presentations That Don't Suck. Yes, we did name a webinar, How to Give Online Presentations That Don't Suck, and we're going to do our best to make sure tonight's online presentation doesn't suck.
Exactly, which is hopefully what you expect from us. So welcome from Brussels as well. It's
Yes.
it's really great to be back.
Absolutely. For those of you who are joining us for the very first time, we have been running a webinar series, a free webinar series all year long. This is actually the 19th webinar
Oh
in
boy,
our Tech Forward free webinar series. Pretty crazy. We're coming up on the big 2-0.
big
I see
2-0.
some friendly faces in the chat, and I know some of you already know how to do this, but feel free to go ahead and drop us a little note in the chat. Remember, you can change that from sending your message to panelists to sending your message to everyone if you want everyone to see your message. So go ahead and tell us where you are joining from in the chat as well. In the meantime, I will say hi to those of you who are watching on YouTube or those of you who are watching this replay afterwards on YouTube. It's great to have you there too. As a reminder, you can subscribe to our channel. We've got tons of great content right there. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this webinar will be an hour long, and the recording and the slides will both be available on demand right afterwards, well, within 24 hours, on the webinar library page on our
Yes.
website, where you can also find the other 18 webinars and the slides. Those are all free, so you just look for Tech Forward and webinars and you will find them.
Exactly.
We also have the Q&A box. We would recommend any questions you want to make sure we catch go right into that Q&A box because the chat is getting crazy. In fact,
It
I
is.
see people saying hello from the US. Hi, Sarah. Jean-Claire from Gabon. Nathaniel from the UK. Anna from Rome. We've got people from Mexico, Italy, Berlin, Kenya, Texas, Paris,
Wow.
California, Costa Rica, Strasbourg. Wow. Great to see you all here. And yes, Alex, how's it going?
It's going very well. As you can tell, we're a little overexcited maybe because we haven't done this in a while. So it's great to be back online live for today's webinar. I think we'll just skip the introductions for now. I think you know that by now, and you can look it up online anyway. And we'll jump straight into the topic of today. And for that, I'll give you a little bit of an overview of what we have in store today, what we have planned. So the big topic, as you have seen and heard, is how to give online presentations that don't suck. So first of all, we're going to look a little bit into why that is the case. Why are so many online presentations so bad, so boring? And then we'll give you actually a lot of tips on how to avoid exactly that problem. So how to look good, how to sound good, a few strategies that you can use, such as show, don't tell. Of course, a few tips on mastering the platform that you're using. That could be Zoom, that could be GoToWebinar, that could be, I don't know. There are so many webinar platforms out there, but these tips should help you for all of those. And of course, we also have a few practical ideas for how to engage your audience. That's a big thing for us. Something that we really care about is audience engagement. So that's the plan for today. And as usually, we will start with a little poll. Is that right, Josh? I think we've prepared something for people. So I'm going to
We
launch that poll and we can jump straight in. Here we go.
we did. So here's the poll. It's popping up on the screen, but I'm going to read it out for those of you who are watching on YouTube, and you can just type your answers in on YouTube if you want.
Absolutely.
This is a multiple choice question, and the question is, what are your favorite ways to engage with speakers during online presentations? Using the chat, using a Q&A feature in your platform, deciding the questions you like most. So upvoting the best questions, downvoting the questions you're not that interested in, turning on your microphone and actually saying something on mic. Tricky to do with 100 people here in the room or nearly that, but
Indeed.
certainly possible. And you can also turn on your camera so people can see you in some webinars and some online meetings. Of course, you can do breakout groups, breakout rooms, things like that. And there also might be other things you like to do to engage with speakers or engage with participants if you're speaking during a live session, feel free to go ahead and pop those ideas right into the chat if you have them. I see that 64% of the people have now voted, and I see Adriana is suggesting Mentimeter, which indeed is one of the things we're going to talk about later. So don't worry, if you don't know what it is, we'll get there as another way to engage with people. Absolutely. We are up to 72% of the vote. We'll give you another 15 seconds to go ahead and answer.
Exactly.
And let's close that poll and see what the answers are.
Here we go. Let's take a look at the results.
All right, so the
Chat is a clear
winning
favorite. Yep.
option, 62% of people say they like the chat. The next one is 48% of people say they like to turn on their mic and actually speak to the presenters or have the attendees speak as well. Q&A seems to be in third place with 38%, followed by turning on your camera and doing breakout groups with 30 and 28% respectively. And I see a comment here from Andy that he likes having cameras on to create a sense of community amongst participants. Absolutely. Depends on what the point of your online presentation is. Sometimes in smaller groups, you can especially be working on that. When you're speaking to a really big group, it's a bit trickier, but nevertheless, we are big fans of using cameras. And I see a mention of Slido as well. And in fact,
I think just briefly on the point of cameras, I think that's something that always depends on the context as well. So right now, most of us, if not all of us, are often working from home, joining these sessions from home. And sometimes it's just not practical to be able to turn on the camera. So I think that we as presenters also need to respect that and sort of find a middle ground between what works for the presenter and what works for the audience. Exactly. Okay, so I think we can move into the actual question for today is why are so many presentations so bad? So let's take a look. There are several things that are at play here, of course, and some of them sort of were shining through in the replies to the poll and in the chat as well. So first of all, there are these typical technical problems. So bad audio, that can be static, background noises, or maybe just very low audio quality because the bandwidth is not sufficient and there's just not enough good internet available. So that can, of course, have bad influence on the audio. So it might be very compressed. It may even sound like you're hearing the other person or the presenter through a telephone line. So that's of course a big problem, especially when interpreting is involved. So I'm assuming that a lot of you people will be able to relate. Of course, bad video can be an issue as well. Usually bandwidth, again, here is the problem, not enough bandwidth available. So it's kind of tricky to have both the sound and the video at sufficient quality. Sometimes the presenter may not even have video at all. You just see the slides and then you get this disembodied voice, which, you know, sometimes that's maybe the right approach, but very often it makes for a very strange experience. At least that's my my point of view. It's very strange if you can't actually see the person that's presenting, but that happens very often, especially for product presentations, demos and stuff like that. You'll see that very often. And of course, there are other technical problems that can pop up. You know, there can be something wrong with your gear. Maybe your headset doesn't work. I know that Josh has, I think, at least 2 or 3 headsets at this point because some of them, you know, give him a headache sometimes because they don't work properly. So it's good to have a plan B. Again, that's a little trick on the side. Good to have replacement gear available. And then, of course, there's the big thing that is not just limited to online presentations, but that happens offline as well all the time, is death by PowerPoint. So you'll have too many slides, too much text on the slide, people just reading from the slides, which you can do yourself much quicker and much easier, so you don't have to listen to a presenter reading the text out for you. I mean, there's just no point in that, obviously. And of course, very often, especially in business contexts, I think you won't really have engagement or interaction. So it's just a person reading out the slides or maybe telling, you know, they're giving their marketing shtick, and it's really not very engaging. You're just sitting there and looking at it, and you wonder why you actually made time to join the presentation when you you could have just watched it on YouTube maybe at a later date. It can also happen that the presenter is overwhelmed, and again, this is not not to be mean or anything. That just sometimes happens because there are technical issues, internet outages, the slides may not be working properly, or the screen sharing gives something is just not right, and that's actually the reason, and well, it's one of the reasons, to be honest, that there's usually the two of us, so it will be Josh and me for every webinar. That makes it more engaging, more interesting, also for us, for you, hopefully as well. And of course, we can share the workload. So one of us can run the polls in the background, the other person can sort of talk to what we're doing. And it's just more fun and also kind of a safety net as well. And we're trying to avoid a situation where one presenter would be overwhelmed. And then, of course, there can also be issues with the actual content that is being delivered. I don't really like the word content, but it's just meant in a sort of very broad sense here. So that could be a product presentation, a new product introduction, whatever the webinar is about or the presentation is about. Sometimes it's just not very interesting, or maybe you know all that stuff already and you were expecting to hear something new, something exciting, maybe a nice story, but instead you get the same old business pitch, which is just not very interesting. So that's a bit of a problem as well, obviously, and something that should definitely be avoided. So I don't think we should dwell too much on what's bad. Maybe we should go and dive into what we can actually do about it. And just one thing I wanted to mention is sort of as the story behind this webinar was that this was actually prompted by somebody having a problem, somebody thinking, I need to get this online presentation. What's the best way of doing that, and how do I actually approach it? So that's kind of sort of the motivation that's in us, in here for us.
Yeah, so, picking up on that, I think it's important with whatever kind of presentation you're giving, online or offline, to not just structure it based on what you want to say necessarily, but to structure it based on what your audience is coming to hear, right? I try to identify what their problems are and then try to use that presentation to solve those problems. So for example, the clear problem in this webinar is a lot of online presentations suck. And so what we're trying to do is find ways to provide potential solutions to that so they don't suck quite as much. So let's start looking at image, right, at your video. Now, you've noticed that both Alex and I are on video, and we're huge proponents of webinars where people are on video, not just some slides where you can't see the speaker or where they're tiny, we'll get to that in a minute, but actually appearing on screen. Now, some of you might recognize these two images. We took them for the audio and video secrets video that we put out, and that so many of you helped to subtitle into all sorts of languages. That video is about how to get good audio and video in remote meetings and settings. And you'll see here that there are two images of yours truly. Now, we thought about having you vote on these, which one looked better. But we figured it would be pretty obvious,
Indeed.
what the answer is. In the image on the left, I am totally backlit. I'm sitting in front of a window at my house, and the background is pretty chaotic. As you can see all the apartments across the street. You can see tons of different plants. You can see there's not very much light on my face. You can't see me all that well. On the other hand, in the photo on the right, we've got me nicely centered, front and center on the screen. I am against a white wall. The lighting on me is pretty good. This was actually natural light, although we'll talk about other types of light too. And the background's not too busy. One little image in the corner, but other than that, you can really focus on me. Thank you very much, Kate. I do like the plants as well. We have quite a nice plant collection in my house, and it's growing by the day.
Literally growing by the day, yes.
Yes, it is. So let's talk about how you look your best. A presentation is not just about the content. It's also about you. It's about you getting in front of your audience and speaking to them and communicating. And I know that a lot of the people who are here for this webinar are translators, interpreters, professional communicators, so I don't want to preach to the choir too much. We all know the tricks. You can use your voice to make what you're saying interesting. You can use your face to make what you're saying interesting. You can use your body language to make what you're saying interesting or to really stress a point. And there are a few things that you can also do on the back end to make sure you look good, starting with lighting. If you're using natural light, you want that to be coming straight on at you, ideally not from the side. And many of you probably by now have picked up a ring light or something like that, which helps you get even light on your face as you are speaking. I have one on me right now. I can even change the colors and stuff like that if I want. We already talked about backgrounds, and we have the framing very clearly here. I am front and center, right in the center of this shot. You might also want to get a green screen. We're not big fans, to be honest, of using virtual backgrounds without one. We think you end up looking quite fuzzy around the edges. Doesn't look that great. But investing in a decent quality camera, a webcam, something like that, and a green screen so you can have images like this one can really help. And of course, eye contact. It's kind of weird to do eye contact in these online settings, right? But that entails looking at your audience the same way you would do it in an in-person setting, looking into the camera, making eye contact, not staring at somebody, of course, and then making sure that you actually appear on the screen. All of your gestures are on the screen as well. So we just wanted to put up one image here to talk about how you often look on screen. And one of the reasons we're not big fans of slides. If you see things you don't like about this, you can go ahead and pop those right into the chat. I'm going to tell you a few things that I think aren't ideal here. First of all, we can see the speaker, but he's kind of small. I mean, this is the platform. He's stuck in a corner. He's not as small as in some platforms. Some platforms, you're really tiny. But there he is, tucked in the corner. I see Samar says the font is really small. Absolutely. The person probably thought there was a lot. They were doing a good job because they were using a relatively large font, but there's a lot of stuff on that slide. You can see the guy is lit from the side, not from the front. And he's got the dreaded nose cam. So when you've got your webcam coming up at you from below, I am not a huge fan of that. Yeah, think about colors, Janlu. That yellow can indeed be a bit glaring. You want to pick colors that are easy on the eyes. Alex, do you have any other thoughts about this particular image that you wanted to share?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I think we've covered most of the things. Overall, I think I've seen interfaces that are much worse. So this is not too bad, actually, but just a few things that could be improved there. And just a practical tip to avoid the nose cam is most of us will probably use a laptop. So you're kind of stuck with the built-in webcam. Those are usually not very good, but that's a different topic. But what you can just do is prop the laptop up on a stack of books, for example, to get the camera roughly to eye level or maybe just slightly below eye level. That should give you a good camera perspective then as well. But I think that's probably enough on the how to look at your best.
And I'll just make a brief plug for a video that we put out about 2 months ago on using a tool called Camo, how you can actually turn your phone into a good camera that you can use so you don't have the dreaded nose cam. So that's an option, as well as, of course, just having your webcam on a tripod or on something that it's at the right height. You can even use a stack of books in a worst case scenario to get it at that right height.
Exactly. Good tips and good plug for that video. So go check that out. Now, we've talked about video a little bit, so we'll talk about audio now. And for that, I'm just going to turn off the slides, just like that, because you don't have to have slides for everything. I mean, that's seems kind of obvious, but maybe sometimes it bears repeating. So there's kind of a very simple, but I think very effective formula. And I've talked about this on one of the first webinars we did way back when in April, which feels like ages ago at this point. Anyway, the formula is that you need the right environment, you need the right gear, and with that combination, you can get actually very good quality, very high quality for your online presentation, also for other things. So maybe you need to record yourself for whatever it is, that will help you too. So just a few sort of golden rules, I think, for that in terms of the environment that you want to be in to sound your best. So first of all, a small room is usually better than a big room. I'm not talking about bathroom because there's a lot of tiles in there, which makes for horrible sound, but maybe a small room is better than, a big wide room. That's probably easier to do these days because so many of us are doing this from home. So you're probably stuck in a small home office maybe, or you're using your kids' room, I don't know, whatever it may be. So that's usually a better option. Also, you actually don't want to be the room too uncluttered. What I mean by that is it's actually good to have stuff in that room, like bookshelves, plants. In Josh's case, a lot of plants there. Maybe a sofa or an armchair or something like that, or a nice rug, maybe even one that's hung to the wall, because all of that will eat the reflection of sound that is going on once there is sound in the room, like you speaking, for example. And I think I just take it as a given that you're using headphones and a proper microphone. I think that's kind of obvious, but a full room is kind of better than an empty room that provides for a lot of echo. Then, since we just mentioned the mic, I still think that for most people, a good headset like the one I'm using, which is the Sennheiser PC 8.2, I don't get money for this. I just like the headset. That's all. That's why I'm mentioning it. But of course, there are very knowledgeable people out there like Tamber Hilton who do comparisons and tests and everything. But the headset, I think, is the easiest to use because it gives you the headphone and the microphone built in. The big advantage is that sorry, it's on this side. With the mirrored image, there you go. The microphone will usually be at a very good distance from your mouth. Make sure that it's not too close to your mouth. So it should be off to the side a little bit and maybe down to your chin, because otherwise you'll get these P sounds, the plosives, and it's very unpleasant to listen to that. Sometimes you don't even notice yourself when you speak, but your audience will certainly notice it. So just a little bit to the side, maybe a little bit down from the mouth, and you should get very good sound. There's one way to check that. You can just do an audio recording on your computer and just listen to what that sounds like and then improve the mic position compared to that. When you have like a dedicated USB microphone, like the Yeti, unfortunately, is very popular. I'm not going to go into that, but you should, of course, know what kind of microphone it is, so how it should be used. Some microphones need to be a little bit further away from the mouth. Others should be as close as possible, so make sure you know what microphone you're using. And usually it's a good idea to use something like I have here. I don't know if you can see that. So one of these boom arms where you put the mic on top and it's sort of free floating. That means that if you accidentally tap on your desk or your cat jumps on the desk, whatever may happen, is that you don't get those noises into the microphone and it doesn't get picked up. And of course, having dedicated mic and headphones is kind of a given at this point. Please don't use the built-in mic. Please don't use the speakers and the mic. That will always lead to bad sound quality feedbacks and stuff like that. And yeah, for video, you heard some good tips from Josh already, which is very useful. Maybe just a few practical tips. Of course, you've heard before that you should use an Ethernet cable, which is what I'm doing right now, because it gives you a more reliable connection and usually always a bit more bandwidth because Wi-Fi, it's just stuff flying through the air. So things can get lost. Often that's sound or video quality. So if you can, please use an Ethernet cable. If your computer doesn't have an Ethernet jack, there are adapters. That's actually what I'm using a fair amount, is like a little adapter like this. So the Ethernet cable goes in here, and then you just have a normal USB plug that can fit into any laptop or even tablet if you want, and you can use Ethernet there as well. If that's not an option, move as close to your router, to your Wi-Fi router as possible to get a better connection, and close all the apps that you don't need in the background to make sure that your computer has all the resources available that it needs. So that's my little diatribe on sound. I don't know if we had any questions coming in, Josh, meanwhile?
Yeah, there was a question, and I didn't say this at the beginning, but we love to take questions as we're going along. So pop those into the chat box or in the Q&A. One person asked, what headsets are the two of us using? We're both using Sennheiser brand headsets right now. Alex has the PC 8.2,
Yes.
and I'm using the SC60 as we speak. We talk lots more about headsets, and we're actually maybe going to do something that goes into even more detail on that later. Yes, I'm foreshadowing what we're talking about. But yes, I'm happy to go ahead and put that in the chat for everyone, Daisy, so that everyone can see exactly what we are talking about. There's another question here. Um, if you're using a USB microphone, do you have duplicate microphones with the headset?
Well, in that case, I think if you're using a USB mic, I would recommend just using normal headphones, so not use a headset. It shouldn't be a problem, but just to make sure you don't get the input channels mixed up and stuff like that, I'd probably just go with normal headphones that don't have a built-in headset.
But in any case, you can certainly select the input that you want to be
Absolutely.
using on any platform you are using for online meetings. And it's important. A lot of people don't realize that they're using the built-in microphone
Oh, yes.
instead of the one they want to
That
be
happens so
using.
much.
Oh
Yes,
boy,
all the
and
time.
it is pretty terrible. People
Yeah.
say, but I've got a headset. And I was at a
Yeah.
meeting just recently. Yeah, I've got a headset. Well, yes, you do, but the sound that's coming through is not coming through from your headset.
So quick
Now,
tip there, usually that happens with Mac computers, and that's because the audio jack in Mac laptops, I think it works with Apple branded headphones or the earbuds you get with your iPhone, for example. But if you use another model, sometimes it doesn't get picked up properly. So you'll need some kind of sound card. But yeah, we have other courses available that go into much more detail on that. So yeah.
great. So keep those questions coming. We have talked about video, we've talked about audio, and now let's talk about those dreaded slides. I'm not a big fan, let's be honest. And I think that there are a few things that you need to think about, especially regarding slides for online presentations. A lot of people like to use animations in their slides. So whether that's having things zoom in and appear, right, fading in and out, or using something like a Prezi where there's an animation to go from one place to the next, that kind of thing doesn't work all that well in online settings. And that's because there can be a lag. You might have noticed that our slides that we use pretty much always are just one slide, no animations between them. We don't have them fading from one to the next. You just click and move to the next one. That works a lot better in remote settings, something that a lot of people aren't talking about. You always think about those transitions, but no, that is something that we recommend avoiding. Now, another thing that is a major problem that I see are these presentations that are just packed with slides. I've got all these slides and I have to get through them as quick as I can. So I'm just going to fly through my slides one after the next, and so on. And another thing that I especially love to do with slides, and now I'm going to the positive side, is using slides that are really self-evident, that just tell a story. For example, I'm going to show you two slides from our presentation, our webinar that we did on confidentiality, on staying safe online. So we were talking about staying safe when you are out and about, like in this coffee shop. There's a story right here. We've put an image on the screen and we can tell the story. All of these people are out at their local restaurant, local cafe rather. They are doing some work, and one of the major problems there, as you can imagine, is that they're not protecting their data, right? They're just going right onto the Wi-Fi there and using that without using a VPN or something like that. A simple image that tells a story. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, and right here I can take this and unpack it, and you can listen to me and focus on me rather than focusing on the image. Here's another one from that very same presentation. We were talking about cloud computing and the cloud. And here, what we've done is simply put up a joke, a cartoon, something that gets people thinking, right? It's front and center, nicely centered on the screen. There's nothing else there. There's no cloud. It's just somebody else's computer, a message that you want to drill home right there. Here's a third example. You'll see this in every single one of our webinars that we give. we have slides that make it perfectly clear when we are getting on to a point that's about engagement, right? This one clearly says it's time for you to be thinking. Let's do some brainstorming. We pop our prompt right there, usually a little bit bigger. We have a problem here. We did it on purpose. The font's pretty small. Obviously, something that you want to avoid in your slides is that. You want to make them nice and clear, as we said before. And coming along to a pro tip, something that we have been testing out is a new app called Yes, it's really called that allows you to kind of turn this into your own TV broadcast studio, right? Where you can put your slides up behind you, just like this guy has done right here. You can put yourself on the screen in front, pick your background with a whole bunch of virtual backgrounds, and that will make it a little bit more interactive because then people can really see you, right? They're not focused on the slides. They have a chance to look more at you. So I think that's what we wanted to say about slides, and we'll take them down. And I see there was a question coming in about font size. Alex has already answered it right here.
Yep.
But basically, you want the font to be as big as you can make it and put as little text as possible on that screen. So yes, I'll just pop the name of this app in here. It's called
Yeah, go ahead. I think it's
Um,
two M's, one H, two M's, double M,
yes,
H, double M. We'll
it's
put links
still,
into the slides anyway, so you can find it. Don't worry.
yeah, is still in beta actually, and there's still some work to go. It's not quite at the level that we're going to recommend it wholeheartedly, but you may see it coming to a webinar near you very
Yes.
soon. They have been rolling out lots of improvements as it has been developing, and we are keeping close tabs on it and hoping that we can share it with you and the whole Tech Forward community soon. And I think,
Sorry, I'm just gonna acknowledge the question from Andy here, or the comment rather, that he loves the idea of using a picture instead of a set of bullet points. Yeah, we completely agree, and I've been building my presentations like that or around that idea for years actually. So maybe just a quick comment on that, because some people just go, they jump into Google or whatever search engine they use and use the image search and just use whatever image they find. I would not recommend that simply because usually those images are copyright protected, so you can't just use any image out there. I don't know whether there's an exception for that in an educational context at university, for example, but overall you want to be using resources that give you freely available material, such as unsplash.com. So unsplash.com. I think that's where this coffee shop comes from. There are other resources as well, and I'll just make a note to self that I put that into the slides afterwards. So just something to be aware of. So don't just Google an image or search for an image and then just go ahead and uses that. Now, a lot of people seem to be interested in, which is interesting. Yes, it's a good idea to have a green screen for that, because it has some nice features. Some nice features where it uses your image and tries to show just you without the background. And of course, that usually works better if you have a green screen behind you, the way Josh and I are doing at the moment. It's interesting as well that Robert picked up on as well for the for sign language. I'd actually be, if you try it out, please let us know how it goes. I'd be very interested, because I think there's some kind of AI source in there that always focuses on the face. So for example, when you move within the frame, the camera sort of pans around with you to really focus on the face. So I'd be very interested in seeing whether that whether it would work with sign language interpreting or a sign language speaker. That I'd be very interested in that. And maybe that's something, if it doesn't work, that would be very interesting as feedback for the company developing this. They're still in beta, so this might be very interesting feedback for them. And it might be something that is not even on their radar, which unfortunately is very often the case.
I'll just say in passing that which is currently in beta, as we said, is only available for Macs running pretty recent operating systems. So if you have an older Mac, it probably won't run on it. I believe they're
Yeah.
planning on rolling this out for PCs as well, but they started with Macs. And so yes, it's a pretty interesting tool, and we look forward to seeing it and similar tools that make your virtual presentations even more dynamic coming out soon. There's one
Speaking
more.
of dynamic, sorry to jump in there, but I just saw this comment from Adrian. It's true. I am standing. I have a standing desk right here. So, and actually, I prefer standing up doing these webinars because I think I'm just more engaged that way. It's the same actually for me when I record video for our online courses, which we have on techforward.com. I usually do that standing up because I find that I'm much more active and just more engaged. And it's easier for me to engage with the camera and to sort of imagine that there's a person I'm talking to at the other end or behind the camera, if you will. And Josh is sitting mostly for the reason, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, is that you are using a green screen that is attached to your chair. So if you were to stand up, the green screen's gone and everybody
I
would see your plant collection, I
I am. You
suppose.
can see there's my chair
Yeah.
right there. If I rotate, you can actually see the wall behind me. This is a green screen called the Web Around, and we are actually working on a feature about the Web Around, which will be a YouTube video and a blog post and all sorts of fun stuff coming up about that later. So you'll hear all about this guy. But in the meantime, I will type the name of my green screen into the chat box for anybody who wants to see it there. Um, we've been talking for an awfully long time without doing something
You're right.
engaging.
You're right. Let's
And
do something
one
engaging.
of the rules for making a webinar interesting or an online presentation interesting is doing something engaging. So we are going to jump into some ways that you can do just that. Right, Alex?
Yes, we are. And this is the giveaway. Again, you see here, this is one of the prompt slides that we're using. So there's a person here, a hand, holding a widget, a kind of tool. So that means that you can get your hands dirty, but only in not in the literal sense, but you can play around and try something. So this is several things. So for us, it's kind of a demo to be able to show you. For you, it's a way to sort of engage, to do something a little bit different, not just listen to us, drone on and on about all these kinds of things. And it's also a lead up to the next point, which will be master your platform. So this is a tool, the whiteboard tool that I know is that I think is available in several platforms, but I think the way that Zoom have implemented it is just really great because I can now go ahead as a host in a Zoom webinar and share a whiteboard. And hopefully you will all be able to see that now. So I'm just going to check on YouTube whether that comes across as well. You should be
I
able to
see it
see
perfectly.
a blank canvas, exactly. And you now have the possibility to draw on it, to write some text like this, for example. You can have these little stamps, I think they call them. Yeah, so we could have spread a little love on this whiteboard. And Josh, why don't you join us? Why don't you add a little bit to that whiteboard as well? I
Sounds
think
great. I'm here. I will just grab my tablet
And I think
and
for those of
say
you who are
hi.
a little bit lost, maybe, I think, Josh, there's a little bit of a trick, right, to be able to activate this feature as an attendee
Exactly. We
in a
actually want
webinar.
all of you to try to hop right onto this collaborative whiteboard and practice writing on it. So if you are on the interface on your computer, at the top of your screen, you'll see a bar. It probably says you're viewing Alexander Drexel's screen or something like that, and then view options next to it. You can click on view options and go right down to annotate, and you'll see an annotation bar pop up. And then you can grab the mouse, for example, and draw. Let's see if I can do it right here. From there. And you should also be able to write text and things on here. If you're
And
using, yep, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say, you may have seen when I move my little cursor, you see that the cursor has my name attached to it, so people can actually see who's doing what. Apparently, you don't have an annotate option. So let me just
Ah,
take a look at that. Oh no.
it should be available in
Yes,
theory.
it should be.
And let's see
It
if we
says
can
here it's enabled for
actually.
everyone, so I'm
All
not
right,
sure.
let's see if we've turned it on properly. If not, alas, that would be an example of our tech not working and our not mastering the
Yes.
platform. We are sad to hear that it doesn't work.
Oh
Um,
no.
Oh no, but in any case, if you're in a meeting, it should work in webinars. I'm not quite sure why it didn't. This is a platform specific thing anyways, but it's as simple as being able to head on over and have various people interact, write on the same text, annotate the same text, discuss things, make a list, for example, with a few different bullet points. All this stuff can be a way to bring interactivity to your presentation that you're giving online. Instead of just droning on, you give people the opportunity to interact. And we've talked about a few different shared whiteboard tools in the past. What we're using at the moment is the one baked right into the Zoom platform, but we also like Jamboard, for example, which is another great way to
Tech
do it.
forward favorite, yeah.
We have done this before where we've just popped a link into a presentation, had everyone go right there to that shared Jamboard and start doodling away. So that is another tool that we like. But as we said before, the different platforms tend to have whiteboards built into them.
I think I know
Now,
what's going on. This might just be due to the fact that when we tried it, we were on a Zoom meeting, and this is a Zoom webinar, so this may be the reason. But this actually, if you allow me, is a good segue to the next topic. um, since we like good segues over here at Tech Forward, and the topic is master the platform, right, Josh? That's so obviously something that we didn't test in enough situations.
should have tested it with the webinar. Here
Yeah,
we go.
exactly. So in any case, whiteboarding is definitely an option. Just test it before so you know it works in your sort of particular situation as well. And of course, then sometimes you may have to talk the participants or the other people who are involved a little bit through the feature. That's what we're trying to do. It didn't work, but maybe we can get to do that next time. I don't know if WebEx has a web around, but oh, Josh has already answered the question. I should just shut up.
I
Shut
am
up.
so
Okay.
quick on the draw over
Yep.
here, Alex.
That's why we have two people on this webinar, exactly. So another thing that is really key, I think, to engaging presentations is screen sharing. So this is the whole aspect of show, don't tell. So sometimes, you know, especially if you're doing you're demoing a software tool, for example, or maybe you're showing a client a new project that you're working on, whatever it may be. Sometimes it's best to not just talk about it for hours on end, but to actually show people what is going on, so they are able to see it. And you know, you can show them, please click on this button, and then that happens, and so on and so forth. Another thing that we like to do here at Tech Forward is polls. That's what we've done in the beginning. That's just very nice to, you know, bring people in, get their opinions on something, for example, get their input on something in a sort of structured way, because you can see sort of, you know, how many people chose option A, B, and C, and so on. So that's a very quick way also of getting input from, you know, maybe a lot of people. I mean, right here, I don't know how many people we have on the call right now, but several dozens, you know, then it's very easy to get input from a lot of people at the same time. Also, you should be up to speed with the platform. You should know how to mute people. You know, sometimes people forget to mute themselves, and suddenly there's a dog barking, or, you know, someone's ringing at the door and doesn't stop. So you want to be able to quickly mute someone. So on Zoom, for example, that's quite easy. You just have your list of participants to the right, and you can go in and mute people, or you can actually give them the mic. You know, if you want input from them, you should know how to do that quickly, so people don't have to wait and have to ask, can everybody hear me? You should be able to sort of take them by the hand and involve them in your presentation. Same, of course, applies to turning video on, turning video off, if that's something that you want to do. Another thing, which online format are you using? We just talked about that. Is it an online meeting? Is it an online webinar? For the kind of stuff that we do here for these Tech Forward free webinars, as the name implies, the webinar is the perfect format. So we have two hosts. Sometimes we may have panelists if we interview someone or bring somebody in. We have done that before. So the webinar is a perfect format for that because it gives us the Q&A, it gives us the chat. Obviously, that's there always, but it just gives you a certain structure, and it makes it a little bit easier to do the thing that you want to do. And then, of course, as always here on Tech Forward, we are always in favor of practice, practice, practice. So, you shouldn't expect to just, I don't know, download a tool, buy a tool, and then use it for your next presentation without any practice. That's just not how it works. I mean, even Josh and I, we use a lot of different technology. We use new tools all the time, and we would never use something live that we haven't tested extensively before because we want to make sure it works well. And even then, as you have seen, sometimes it can go wrong, but that's okay. We're just humans, obviously. So show up early. Take a little bit of time if you have panelists on. There's this nice practice room feature on Zoom and on other platforms as well, probably, so that before you go live, before you broadcast, you can bring in people, talk to them, just go through what you want to do during the session, test their setup. Do they have the mic? Do they have the headphones? Is everything connected properly? And so on and so forth. You can also test your virtual backgrounds. That's what we're using here, Josh and I. If you're sharing a video, of course, that is something that you can do as well. You want to make sure that the audio works properly. There are sometimes a few features that you have to enable to make sure that the sound gets across. And actually, there's a good use case for this because during the first lockdown, actually, we're now on the second one. During the first lockdown, my wife and I used to do these Zoom pub quizzes, and there was also always a music round. And during the first times we did that, people were just playing music from their phone, and of course, Zoom would then think, "Oh, this is background noise. There's music in the background. I need to suppress this," and you wouldn't be able to hear the song, and you couldn't guess. Not a very interesting pub quiz experience. But we then figured out there's a feature that you can use in Zoom to make that work well. And of course, as usual, please make sure you have a backup plan. When the video doesn't load or something goes wrong, you want to be sure that you have a backup plan, you can do something else, and you don't leave people sort of hanging, as it were.
And speaking of backup plans, I think we have enough time to roll over to our backup plan for showing you how to do something collaborative. So I am just going to go ahead and pop our link to our collaborative Jamboard right into the chat. And we will pull that up and give it a shot. Everyone should be able to now have access to it. And I see people are joining as we speak. So this is our collaborative whiteboard. Go ahead and say something to us. Use it to write on it. I see people are already starting to scribble and draw, and I will just go ahead and share it so everyone can see what's going on. So in this tool, I see, yes, somebody has found their way to the sticky notes. People are writing on the screen, making this an interactive presentation right here. It is getting a little chaotic.
There's lots going on there.
It's pretty crazy, but there it is. And you are very welcome. We're glad you're having fun. We certainly are too. And yes, this tool might be a bit crazy, as one of you has put it.
Yes.
Obviously, in a normal meeting, in a normal online presentation, you're going to give people clear guidelines about what to do with your tool. You are not going to tell them to just scribble away. You're going to have it structured. All right, here we're going to look at this text. Everyone just jot something down. We've got a list. We're going to have this person writing on it, and so on and so forth. So we have shown you one kind of way to share with others. And I think now Alex is going to show you guys another one.
Yeah, I'll let you look at this mesmerizing display of an elephant while I get to a question that was asked by Ronnie. Thanks for that. How do you motivate other speakers, other panelists to use proper microphones when speaking online? I think that's it's maybe it's a little less difficult than getting your clients in interpreted meetings to use proper sound gear and audio gear. But I think that the most effective way is probably to explain to them that they will just make a much better impression if people are actually able to hear them, see them properly, whether that they are lighted correctly, and that people can actually see them. So I think we all are a little bit vain. So maybe that's something that we can work with in our case. I hope that's a satisfying answer. You can't force them, obviously. So that's maybe just one reply I would give there. All right, Josh, and I'm gonna you're showing everybody the back end of Tech Forward, so I'm just gonna
Oops,
go
sorry about
ahead
that. I forgot I was
and
sharing my
share my
screen. Usually it's
screen.
you.
Yes, yeah, usually I am the one who doesn't get the screen sharing right.
Well, hey, everyone got to see the back end of how things work here at Tech Forward.
Exactly.
And you got to see that we are going to show you one other demo, because one of the things that you can do to make an online presentation interesting as well is to actually show people stuff. Don't just tell them, but show them what you are doing. So here's a little example, right, Alex?
Exactly. I mean, those of you who have been paying attention will notice that this should have happened a little bit earlier. I'm just going to give you that little secret, but I just kind of forgot. So here we go. First of all, so this is just Zoom, but I mean, the other platforms work very similarly. So you can see my entire screen now. And what you want to do is hit the share screen right here. And then you see all these interesting options. So the or maybe not. I hope this gets picked up properly now. Okay,
We
thumbs
can
up.
see them.
So
We can see your pretty crazy screen over there and all of the
yes.
interesting options.
So much going on, exactly. So we have the whiteboard. We saw that. You can also very easily share from an iPhone or iPad wirelessly via AirPlay or via cable. We do that very often in our iPad-specific training. And a little bonus tip here. So down here in this box, you see share computer sound. That's very interesting when you want to share a video that you have on your computer and you want to play it out to the webinar or to the meeting. So that's what you want to enable. Then it picks up not only your microphone, but also the sound coming from your computer. That also means it will pick up notification sounds. So turn on Do Not Disturb before you do that. And also when it comes to video, you want to enable the second option here, which is called Optimize Screen Share for Video Clip. That makes it a little bit smoother. And if you play a video clip, it just looks much better in the presentation. There are more options up here. I'm not going to go into that because I wanted to show you real quick just a feature in Zoom, in the Zoom settings, because that's sometimes of interest. So first of all, we've mentioned several times that we have these sort of virtual backgrounds or digital backgrounds, because that looks much more interesting than actually my basement or Josh's plant collection. But that means you get to play a little bit with that as well. You can use, like a little fun background image like I'm using right now. Maybe not for a serious business meeting, but if you're teaching online, that can be a nice little sort of, just a nice little thing to change things up. If you have a more recent computer that can handle that, my old laptop didn't do that. The new one thankfully does it. You can also have a video background like this one. That's a little bit of a gimmick maybe, but I'm sure that some of you can come up with a very good and educational use case for this where you want to have video in the background. You can also mirror your video. That's kind of nice. That prevents me from screwing up the side of the microphone of my headset. So there you go. Also, there are some sort of more fun things now that you can do in Zoom and other platforms as well. I'm not going to go into that for lack of time, but that would be a very practical, very hands-on way of just sharing something with your audience and showing them how it's done. So that's a very easy way to just do it. And I think one thing that Josh is very passionate about, of course, is audience engagement. And we try to, bring all these things into our webinars from time to time, not too much because it's easy to overdo stuff. That's what we have with animated slides and so on. But Josh, do give us a few ideas, please, for audience engagement.
Sure. We'll get to the few interesting ideas and questions came in. We'll get to them right after this.
All right. Yeah.
But first, audience engagement, as we are somewhat distracted by Alex's virtual background. So I wouldn't
I'll turn
recommend
it off. Yeah, I just needed a quiet moment to turn it off. I will.
leaving them on for extended periods of time. But yes, you can switch over to one real quick to drill a point to get people's attention. That's actually something that Alex and I do by tag teaming, is keeping people engaged, because there are a lot of studies out there that say every 3 to 5 minutes or so, you should have some way of engaging your audience, of grabbing their attention. And so there are lots of different ways to do it. One thing you might have noticed is that we like to shout out the people who are here. At the beginning of our webinars, we tell people to say hi and say hi right back. We will call you by name. We usually will only use a first name. Sometimes we leave people's names out on purpose when that comes along because we don't want to call people out if they're saying something that they might not want in a recording. But we find that those personal welcomes are great, and also acknowledging the people asking questions keeps them engaged. That's one thing that you can do. Now, we talked about polls a little bit earlier, and you can also add quizzes, which are sort of taking polls up um, a notch. There are different tools out there. For example, I know lots of people know about Slido. It's become very popular recently. Slido has the opportunity to put in some more polls in there. And then there are tools that a lot of teachers use. Tools like, and I'll ask Alex to type them in the chat while I'm going along, things like Mentimeter or Kahoot can allow you to add a kind of degree of gamification to what you're doing, because you pop up a question on the screen. Maybe it's a multiple choice question. People have to try to get the right answer. They can even get scores, points when they're getting the answers right. They can win badges as you're going along. Obviously, this depends a lot on your audience, and you don't want to make it too gimmicky, but it is a possibility. Now, some of you might be saying, well, these are all paid tools. How can I make this interesting if I'm not running if I don't have the money to pay for a paid tool? And there's a little secret that a lot of people might not know about, which is that Google Slides itself has a built-in Q&A tool. You can just turn that on if you're using Google Slides, which is completely free. It'll put a banner right up at the top of the screen with a link that everybody can just click on or type into
Should I
their
activate it, or is it too dangerous, Josh?
Ooh, we can try. It's a little dangerous, but you
Just
can try while I speak. In any case, I'm
very
just
briefly,
speaking
yeah.
here.
And I'm
So
going to
let's
turn it
try
off.
it. And there it
That's what it
is.
looks like. Yeah.
Boom. Ask a question at slides.app.goog.gl 5TNZ6. Okay, so it's quite a mouthful. Unfortunately,
Done already,
it's
just to show you what it looks like.
it's complicated.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you these really good short links, but it is built right into Google Slides. So that's an option that is free. Now, we talked about upvoting and downvoting questions. That allows you to answer the most popular questions first. And of course, as we said before, showing people what you're talking about. You saw the back end of Tech Forward today, what our screens actually look like, how you go in and do something, how you adjust those settings. That keeps it more interesting for people. And one thing that is tricky in an hour-long webinar, but very important in online teaching settings, is making sure that you leave time for learning. Not just you blathering away, but putting people in different groups. Now, I know Andy was talking about breakout rooms. We are big fans of breakout rooms. It's very hard to do a breakout room in a 100-person webinar, but when teaching, we love to use them because you can put people in small groups. You can, depending on your tool, pre-assign those small groups too, and let people go debrief, discuss the prompt that you've given them, get to know other people. It resembles a more real life situation, and then they can come back and share their thoughts in the chat, for example, or a few people could take the mic, turn on their camera, and report back. One other idea for audience engagement that we have used from time to time is giveaways. Giveaways keep people engaged. If you've got a product that you can give away, or if you are lucky enough to have somebody who's willing to donate something, as was the case for our recent webinar on Nebo, where we had some licenses we were able to give away. That's another great thing that you can do in some cases. Now, this is just a list. There might be other things that you're putting in the chat as well. You can't use them all in every presentation. We didn't want to try to use them all in every presentation, but there are lots of possibilities. Another great one that Kate's just shared is put people in breakout rooms and have a shared document where everybody can type to feed into that collaborative document and work together. Now, by way of conclusion, we just wanted to put up a very short message on the screen for you, right, Alex?
Yes, exactly. And this, I think, is a good example for, not to brag, but for a good slide. There's not a lot of stuff on there. It's just really meant to drive the point home that we've been trying to make all along. And that is, make it a journey, try to tell a story. Try to take people by the hand and explore what the problem is and how you can solve the problem for them, or how you can solve the problem together with them by giving them a little bit of an input. So you don't have, oh my God, it's a full hour. What am I going to do? But time's just flying by, ideally, because you're making it a journey and you're telling an interesting story. One thing that we are also passionate about is showing our passion for technology, and not just for geeking out, although we enjoy that as well, but showing our passion in a way that we are sort of showing you cool tools and how to make the most of them to solve your problem. And that's kind of the third point here, is solve a problem. You shouldn't have a 90-minute webinar where you bring people on and then you just pitch the entire time, and you're just turning it into one big advertising and telling them how great you are all the time. You should give something back, provide some value for the people who are taking out time out of a busy day, and maybe the kids are knocking at the door, but they're taking the time for your webinar. So please make it worth their while. And there's a good question here coming in from Adrian again, is the question of how long should the presentation be? 1 hour, 1.5 hours, 2 hours? Sometimes it can be 20 minutes. If you have something small, if you're just solving a small problem, as it were, don't go on and on and on. Do it in 20 minutes, make it as short as it can be. And sometimes, maybe you need 90 minutes. And I think the sort of secret to making a longer presentation work, or a longer session work, whatever it may be, is to just break it up in little chunks. Have other activities, maybe watch a video in between, something relaxing, maybe have just a little bit of chit chat, maybe take an actual coffee or comfort break in between. If it's a long session, that is perfectly fine.
Yeah, I was reading some research recently that said after 17 minutes, you've lost people. So I mean, 3 to 5 minutes, you got to change activities, and after
It's probably
17,
on the longer side, even 17
yeah,
minutes sounds like a
exactly.
long
But
time.
17, basically, it said presentations should never be longer than 15 minutes. You should be able to say everything in that short period of time and really convey your message right like that. Now, as we're wrapping up, we just wanted to put one question for you all on the screen. Of course, you can continue to pop in some questions for the Q&A, but we wanted to ask you, what's your biggest lesson you've learned today? So if you could just go ahead and pop that right into the chat box. What is your biggest lesson, your biggest takeaway from today? We'll take 2 more minutes and wrap things up. I did want to acknowledge a very interesting idea that I saw in the chat a while ago, which is that one way to make sure your speakers have a good microphone is to send it to them and bill them for it. If you're lucky enough to be able to do that, yeah, sure, inexpensive microphone that you can ship right to them will certainly make it more likely that they'll be using a good mic. Great idea if you're offering high-end services. And I know there's another question that Alex wants to answer, and that question is tips for moderating without stepping on people's toes, right?
Exactly. I mean, the big difficulty, of course, here is that when you're moderating is you may be able to see the other panelists or the people that you're discussing with, but it's kind of more difficult to use body language to make people understand that maybe it's time to wrap up, or that you maybe have another question that you want to ask them. So I think this is a difficult thing. One tool that you can use is the chat. Most webinar or online meeting platforms have a possibility possibility where you can send messages either to individual people or just to the panelists, for example. So the attendees will not be able to see it. So you can say, you know, 1 more minute, or please wrap up, or I have another question. Of course, you will have to practice that beforehand. So you'll have to tell your other panelists, please keep at least one eye on the chat from time to time so they can see these cues. And actually, that's what Josh and I are doing all the time. You don't even notice, but we send each other direct messages and saying, hey, you missed that bit, or maybe we can make that little change, you know. And ideally, your participants won't even notice. So that's one tool that you can use. And of course, what you can do beforehand is to have just guidelines and say, please keep your answers short. Please allow some breathing room, you know, in between, where people actually have the possibility to jump in with an additional question, or maybe when something wasn't understood, where they can ask again. So I think I would say use the tools that the platform gives you, and, you know, just have some ground rules that you fix before you start, and that you practice as well, ideally.
So I've seen tons of takeaways in the chat box. I'm not going to read them all out, but lots of great ideas. Breaking it down in small chunks, using a whiteboard, making it engaging, collaborative whiteboards, practicing and having a backup plan. It did mean we ran slightly longer than planned. You do need to know your tech, but we want to thank you for sticking with us, and we are pleased to hear that this webinar didn't suck. Now, before we go, we want to tell you what comes next. Right, Alex?
Exactly. And oops, you can see it here as well. I'm getting a little nervous with my finger here. But yeah, we have a few things that we just wanted to suggest to you that you can do. First of all, with signing up for this webinar, you are also entered onto our mailing list. So you'll be kept up to date with upcoming webinars and, you know, all the stuff that we're up to. We send out emails roughly once a week, so it's not spammy at all. We're trying to, again, make it worth your while. If you're watching us on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment, like the video, or subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with upcoming videos as well. You can, of course, always send us your ideas and questions. Some of you have been doing that in the chat. That's perfect. That is getting captured. Don't worry. You can also email us or just get in touch via social media with any questions or ideas you may have. We also offer one-on-one teaching via online video tools these days. It's not really an option to do that live, but we usually do that as well. And we are also happy to provide tailored training for your association, institution, university, whatever it may be. So feel free to contact us on all these social channels that we've indicated here: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and all the other ones. LinkedIn and email, of course, works as well. Now, if you have appreciated this webinar or earlier webinars and you want to show us your appreciation, you can, of course, spread the word, tell all your friends and colleagues about it, but you can also leave a donation if you like, because we sometimes have to buy software, we have to buy tools. We take a lot of time, of course, as well for researching this. I mean, preparing this webinar also takes quite a bit of time to hopefully make it worth your while and make it interesting. Our suggested donation for a webinar is 10 euros. So if you're able to give that to us, we really appreciate it. If not, that's perfectly fine. You know, you can give us some feedback, or, you know, tell your friends and colleagues. As I said, that is perfectly fine as well. But donations, that is something that helps us keep going with our work here at Tech Forward. And I think that's it. I think people will be sent automatically when this webinar ends to a page where you can find more information and leave your feedback as well. I can only say it's been a blast. As always, it's been a blast doing this with you, Josh. So thanks. And any final words from you?
Yeah, likewise. Thanks to everybody for all of these great ideas as well. I learned something. So that's a great thing.
No
I love it when
webinars.
when we learn from the Tech Forward community. It's great seeing you all. Stay safe. There's lots more that we've got in store, and we look forward to sharing it all with you.
Bye, everyone. Take care.